Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to episode 92 of Trail Society, produced by Free Trail, brought to you by Rabbit. I'm Corinne Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
And I don't know if you just caught that, but we got a new presenting partnership, a new apparel, official apparel, and plus partnership with our good friends over at Rabbit that we have been working on for a little while now. And we are so excited to finally say that Trail Society will be working with a really cool partner this year, a new partner this year, a women's founded company this year. Rabbit, Keely, I know that you've got some your eyes on some gear. What are you excited about?
Well, I would just say my favorite shirt that I've been wearing for the last 3 years is a rabbit shirt that's like a thermal that has flower print. And I've probably like gotten so many girls on board to get that shirt because they love it. And so I always rep that shirt like when it's colder here in Portland. And it is so cute. And I'm so excited to work with them on like some fun new stuff and maybe bring even more cute stuff to the trails. So yeah, I'm really excited about this partnership. And I think they have such similar mindsets to us around like bringing more people to start lines on trail races. And so, yeah, I'm really excited with this new partnership, especially because like their apparel is also really awesome.
Yeah, we're excited to do some collaborative merchandise this year. So if you guys have any specific asks, wants, needs, slide into our DMs. Hillary, what are you most excited about with this partnership?
Oh, I'm excited for just the shared vision of like more just women, girls, people on the trails. And I think you can expect us to be at some events together. That's going to be super cool. I think we're all passionate about this and like just more in-person events, interacting with our wonderful community all around the US. I'm super excited about that and super jazzed on the collaborative, like to have some cool little like, Trail Society merch. I think that's going to be so cool with just a company that makes really awesome quality products. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have more to tease in the weeks and months to follow, but we're just excited to let you know. So, new presenting partner, excited to just like get things going. So, keep your eyes out for what we've got coming down the road. And as always, if there's something that you're looking for, that you need, that you want, that we can help with, slide into our DMs. And so I think we've got some other things to dig into right now. Hillary is on her way or is actively in New Zealand when this comes out. She's been training for a big 100-mile race. And I'm just like, tell us a little bit more, I think, Hilly, to get us started about like making this decision to do a race that I think is probably outside your comfort zone. And just like how you're feeling about that. Like in like knowing that you're gonna be racing this thing. Like how are you feeling about doing this challenge that isn't maybe what you've naturally been drawn to over the course of your career?
Yeah, I think I go back and forth between really nervous and very excited. But I mean, really the reason why I chose this race, is just because I needed a change. I needed something different. I had a lot of fun training for UTMB this summer, but I also needed a really big break. There's something really daunting about just doing all your long runs that like, literally take all day. They're like 8 hours. And it's nice to like
Mhm.
to work on something that is not necessarily my strength. And I it's been that's really what motivated me to do it, to choose this race in the first place. And I heard some really positive things about just the community of trail running over there in New Zealand and just the organization of the race itself. And a few of my Brooks teammates will be out there racing the 100K. So that's also an added bonus, just having some kind of built-in community over there. But yeah, really, it was just about challenging myself. And I've been having the overarching feeling of this training block has been just fun. It's just been different, and that is fun to me. It's really challenging. Like today, I had like a super long run because I had to change it from yesterday because we literally had like Pacific Northwest black ice on the trails and roads, and it was terrifying. So I was like, I literally went out my door at 6 in the morning and was sliding down the sidewalk, and I'm like,
You're
nope,
like,
I'm not
nope.
doing this. And then I went out in the middle of the day when it was kind of sunny and the trail still had this like layer of film ice. I was like,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna we're gonna pivot. The whole goal of this is to have fun and show up and be healthy. And I think obviously I'm competitive and like I want to do well and all this other stuff, but like well is relative. I'm just really proud of myself for like taking a leap and trying something that isn't necessarily what I'm known for, or what like me speaking to myself, like what I know I like. So yeah, I'm just really it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be hard, but you know what? That's the name of the game of what we do. So
I love that so much because I'm pretty sure it was Gorge 100K a couple of years ago where you were like afterwards were like never again. I hate you guys. That was awful. Never again. So never say
yeah.
never.
I think I used the Taylor Swift song for a reel that said never, I will never, never am I getting back together, like never ever. And that was like my song to runnable races. And here I am. So I don't know.
I nannied little kids who sang that song a lot, but they changed it to and I'm never ever
Never.
ever giving back your sweater. So we'll take it.
I could resonate with that. Depending on the sweater, sometimes you don't want to. I have a question for you, Hillary. What's your training
Yeah.
like? What's your training like typical training week been for this kind of race versus kind of like what you've been doing for UTMB? Are you doing more speed work, less volume,
Yeah.
more volume? What are you doing?
Yeah. So that's the coolest thing, Keely, is that I am doing a lot less volume than what I've been typically doing. And it feels like enough. And I think that's the part that I'm really excited about because I think I've gotten caught in this thing of like, if you're training for these long distance races, like more is not always better. And that's definitely what I've been learning this. And so it's been cool to kind of get some running legs back underneath me of like a speed workout. It's like, okay, cool. Like I can cover a lot of ground in an hour and a half and I'm pooped for the rest of the day. Like I'm not doing anything else. So, and it's that and then prioritizing other things. It also just make me happier. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast of
Mhm.
like doing things outside of running and really, and, paying attention to who you are as a whole person just outside of that. And turns out, if you're spending 8 hours on a long run, there's not much time for much else. So
Or mental
it's,
space.
oh my God, it's mostly that, just mental space. I just want to like lay on the couch and just like eat ice cream and watch Yellowstone. Like I'm just like, so that's been really nice. And then it's also just so humbling because it's just like, there's so many fast people here out on the roads. And I'm just like, we're just basically like professional hikers and like these long distance. It's like it's all relative. It's like, what's fast for me is not fast for all these like crazy elite people, but that doesn't mean I can't still feel good about it and that I'm like doing something different. And it's cool this late in like as long as we've all been running for like, and competing for over a decade. It's like it's cool to discover something totally new that you feel like is working and it's like fun. So
That's really
yeah,
cool.
less is more,
It can be,
apparently.
yeah.
I am
Story of my
thrilled
life
to
right
hear
now
this.
too.
Thrilled to hear this. I've been on the
I'm
less is
proud of
more
you.
train for a while. Keely, speaking of less is more, you might be running quote unquote less, but you are using your brain a whole lot. You've always been kind of a busy bee though. You've always been using your brain. You just sneak it in at times. But you're like, you're cranking through year one of medical school. It's been a big adjustment. But we talk about medical school a lot in passing, like, oh, she's busy, oh, she's in class, blah, blah, blah. She's studying for finals again. Because you've had like a bajillion finals this year already. But like give us a little bit of insight as to like what does that actually look like, right? Like there's a didactic classroom portion, there's shadowing, there's clinical rotations. Like where are you in the grand scheme of medical school and like what does a typical week look like for you right now?
So, from a doctor perspective, we're in the phase where our badges have medical student emblazoned across them, so nobody trusts you with anything. So we are not to be trusted in the hospital, which is fine. We don't know anything. But that being said, yeah, I'm mainly in the didactics, which is like the book work. However, at OHSU, once you get through the first 2 semesters, which I finished in December, you switch to being basically you just add time to your schedule. So what used to be like 40 hours of class time and exams roughly now is like 40 hours where you don't have like study time built in really. You have anatomy lab and you have rotations or shadowing. So basically now we have 2 full days of class. And then we have like a half day of class and a half day of shadowing. Then we have a half day of anatomy lab, a half day of class. And then our Fridays are always just exams with afternoon class, plus basically depending on the Friday. So some Fridays we have like 2 or 3 exams, then we don't have any class. And then some Fridays we just have one or two exams, and then we normally have like one or two classes. And so it's fully like a 40-hour week now where it's like the 40 hours are you're doing something mostly. Maybe one of the 3 hour sections you don't shadow that week, so you get like 3 extra hours of studying. But now your studying is going to be like fitting it in outside of the 40-hour work week. So that just takes away a lot more of your free time. Whereas before it was 40 hours with like 2 4-hour chunks of study time built in most weeks, which was really nice, and not no Friday afternoon classes really. So they're definitely like easing you in. They're like, okay, and now we're gonna make you even more busy, and then you're gonna be even more busy. And of course, like I'm starting research this term as well too. Nothing too crazy. Like it's definitely something that I can handle, but just trying to like allocate what I do with my time now that I feel like I have a good sense of like how to do med school. I will say for anyone who like wants to go into it, just like the first day we had a speech from one of our associate deans, and he basically said like keep your eye on your own yoga mat. And while I've only been in it for 2 semesters, every semester I like take my finals, and then there's a ton of like chatter around lockers, and people are freaking out, right? They're like, oh, this question or this question or this question. And like you can get really stressed and you're like, oh no, maybe I failed. When it's like, no, you've never failed. You didn't fail. Like just keep your eyes on your own yoga mat. What you chose was probably correct, or if it wasn't, that's okay. But like you can't get caught up in all of the other people's stress because it just makes you like doubt yourself. And so like just heads down, do the work, keep your eyes on your own mat, like you'll get through it. It's just a daily grind. It's kind of like really nice to have it as a thing because it reminds me of training, like we were talking about last episode, where you just have to do the work. And like if you work from 8 to 7, you can then turn your computer off, or 8 to 7:30, you can be done and have like a normal evening. And but if you don't do that work, then you might be like, studying until midnight or studying every Saturday and Sunday the full day. And that's not what I want to do. So you just have to kind of make sure you're doing the work and you're not getting too far behind. Yeah, so now we have anatomy lab, which I'm stoked about, but unfortunately we can't use them yet because there's something wrong with formaldehyde. So we are currently doing
Oh,
virtual dissections, which is so sad. So I hope
Oh
that
boy.
change. Yeah, I'm optimistic it changes, but maybe not for this term. So
yeah.
that will be
Formaldehyde is nasty
cool.
stuff. Be
I
careful
always
with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I always forgot that most like applied physiology or exercise science or pre-PT like undergraduate programs didn't
Mhm.
have like big time anatomy labs.
Mm-mm.
But like we had 9 credits of anatomy and physiology for my degree as an undergrad, like
Cool.
a 5 credit class and a 4 credit class. And we had like I think each semester we had like 4-ish hours of anatomy lab a week. And it's because like the school I went to in Bozeman, Montana is the WWAMI,
Mm.
the like whammy is like for Washington, Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho because only UW in Seattle has a medical program. And so those medical students like study at their home site for 2 years. And so the Montana whammy students did all the dissections, and then our anatomy lab would like utilize their dissection work to like study anatomy, which was super sweet. Like I had no idea that that wasn't like a normal and like physiology coursework as an undergrad. And so I feel like I think Steven actually went into medical
That's
school
cool.
like having had a bunch of cadaver experience, which was super unusual in comparison to his classmates.
Yeah, I've only ever done like pigs and cats and animals.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all a little bit weird, but it's a super good learning tool. And we feel very fortunate that people dedicate their bodies to science because
Yeah.
a lot of industry needs to
Yeah, and
utilize
every
them.
December after we do the full year with our cadavers, we give them a memorial service.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, that's really cool. I actually
Yeah,
really
we
like
get to
that.
meet like their family members if they want to come to and just like talk to people who are learning from their bodies. It's really,
That's
it feels
super,
special.
that's
Yeah.
super special.
Can I add in a fun fact from this book that I was reading?
Is it Stiff by Mary Roach?
The,
No,
the book.
it's The Ice Pick Surgeon by Sam Keen, and it's going through a bunch of like different basically how there's a lot of kind of crime associated with some of
You guys are
exactly
reading the same
these
book?
things. Oh my gosh, I love Sam Keen. He's awesome. I've read like literally I've read 3 out of his. I've got like the just 3 more that I'm reading from him. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
So there's this one thing about how like the use of cadavers and the discovery of like anatomy and physiology as a research like as basically a topic. They literally used grave robbers. This is very morbid, but it's a part of history where literally the doctor would hire people to go and rob a grave. So people would like stand outside of a funeral home, and this is where they didn't really have embalming agents, and so they would put them in the ground, and they would then go and dig them up right after they buried them before they went like,
Hmm.
putrid, so you could actually like cut them and use them. The doctors would literally hire them, and it became so much so that it became like this business where there was this duo, I think it was in Great Britain, where they were literally trying to get people drunk at a pub, and then they'd get so drunk they'd then strangle them and then sell them to the doctor, like to like get their bounty for
Whoa.
people. I'm not kidding you. It's in there, Corinne. Text me when
Yeah.
you read it.
What's the
So
premise of the book? Is it nonfiction or fiction?
It's all nonfiction. It's
yeah,
basically how
he's
like
he's a
certain
brilliant
things.
science writer.
Hmm.
Yeah, and there's actually he's got a little podcast of like little the footnotes
Hmm.
are all like little podcast episodes that kind of going into more of the like the history behind some of these stories that he's telling. But the whole premise is showing that like all these like crazy amazing discoveries that we use all the time in modern day humanity and medicine, and a lot of things we know about, taxonomy, for instance, it can be related back to some illegal things that have happened throughout history.
Yeah.
So
Oh
it's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great. And then my other favorite science writer is this woman, Mary Roach, who's written a bunch of books.
Hmm.
Fuzz, which is about like the National Park Service, Stiff, which is about like different things that donated bodies can be utilized for. Just like all sorts of really interesting science. So Mary Roach is another really brilliant science writer. If you guys need new reads
Dang
and you're
it.
like bored of listening to us, Sam Keen and Mary Roach are should be high on your
Do you
list.
see this? And people who are watching, I literally got all of these books for
For
Christmas.
Christmas?
And
Oh, nice.
now I'm going to order some more because I
Yeah.
want to read this woman now, Corinne.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've
Oh,
just
Mary,
I've been
brilliant.
reading only fiction since I started school, since all of my other brain is completely nonfiction. I need a total brainwash, so I
Yeah.
can't read
Yeah, that's
fiction
a good
right
That's
or
idea.
nonfiction right now.
yeah, I'm like on a young adult fiction kick right now
Yeah,
too. So
it's
I
really
Which
nice.
ones? What are you reading?
oh well, these are all fair topics. Don't worry. Well, I'll fill you guys in. I read everything that Sarah J. Maas wrote. I
Yeah,
think I
I
read
had
like
just
I
got the series of the Throne of Glass from my sister-in-law.
yeah I think she
Nice.
wrote I think the three series from her are like 18 to 19 books in total, and I read them all in 2024.
Yeah, they're really good.
Wait, is that
So
the like something of the Thorn
she
eight?
Yes,
yes
What's
Aquatar.
it called?
Aquatar.
Avatar. I just started reading it.
that's
You'll
one of
enjoy
her three
it. Yeah.
series. So you've
Okay.
got a whole lot of reading left to do
Not
this
for
year.
Well, there's
children,
another.
but
No.
they're like trending in the 30-year-old world right now.
Oh yeah,
Okay, well,
we are
this
a
is my first
demographic.
time. This is my first time reading. I'm usually like a learning person, but I needed a break too, and it's actually been
Mhm.
really fun. I read also, what did I read?
It's like trashy
Iron,
TV. It's
You
yeah,
need
it's
some
great.
like
sometimes.
Fourth Wing. That's what I
Oh
did.
yeah,
It's good.
Oh
Fourth
yeah,
Wing was great. Yeah, I
yeah.
really like that
Yeah.
one.
The third book
Third
comes
one's
out in
coming out
February.
soon.
I'm really excited
Okay,
about it.
okay,
All right,
nerds.
we're
Anyways,
Okay, settle
digressing.
down.
Although I
Settle
wanted to
down.
add one thing that reminded me from what Hillary said, and I think this is like pertinent and it's very short, but it's a thought
Okay.
I've been having. She was talking about how a lot of, the things we learned to do in medicine came from an illegal activity because doctors just wanted to find a way to do better. And it reminded me of one of our classes we were in post-election where people were pretty somber and they started grilling some of our doctors who were talking to us about abortion care. And I'm not going to go down the
Mm.
abortion care rabbit hole, but I really liked one of their phrases, and it was basically saying how we don't know what the future holds, but we do know that doctors notoriously fight for their patients and they figure out a way. And that like really fired me up. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole at all, but I think that is so true, right? Like we will figure it out. Like we are fighters for our patients and like we'll figure it out. Something.
Yeah,
mm, I
I
like
like
that.
that. I like that a
Even,
lot.
we're not grave robbers anymore, but
Yeah, we less illicit, less illegal practices, but yeah, no, the fighting for what's right, I think is really important, and that goes across disciplines, right? I think
across disciplines
Mm.
for
we
sure.
can
Yeah.
all do that in our day-to-day lives. But I guess we'll move on from there. There's no easy transition from that to talking about anything else, but here we are. Welcome to our lives. I guess the only little life update on my end is that hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, the ink will have dried on some stuff for me, kind of contract wise, but also like sort of starting a new job, that I will hopefully get to tell you guys more about in real time, like
Mm.
publicly. It's really cool. It's gonna like allow me to do some really positive work in the space and in sport, and I'm really excited about it. So, you guys will get to hear about it, I guess, in February. So just
Mm.
keep hanging out with us.
Yeah, we'll
Uh,
talk through contract stuff in February, whatever we can talk about.
yeah, exactly. Um,
Yay.
but yeah, we've got some news to touch on. So we've got a really phenomenal interview today with Sarah Lesko. She's brilliant. But before we get into our interview with her, I pulled out a really interesting little news bit. I think I've talked about this newsletter before called Well to Do. Another really brilliant science writer, mostly in the health space. She works with all the big publications. Um, and I love her newsletter. And in the most recent one, she had this article pulled, and her headline in the newsletter read, "No, exercise is not better than antidepressants for therapy, according to a new study. Quote, it is crucial to communicate science honestly." And it's a one pager, it's a super easy read. But essentially, it's going into detail about how headlines are one thing, right? We've all seen like clickbaity titles. We've all seen science be misinterpreted. We have misinterpreted science on here. And we talked about that a little bit last episode about like what we missed in a science piece, for example. And that's kind of highlighted in this little piece of research that came out early December of 2024. And essentially, like one of the very first like quotes off the top just says exercise is 1.5 times more effective than either medication or cognitive behavioral therapy. And that is a misleading headline that has been widely disseminated to millions across news outlets, podcasts, videos, blogs. This claim erroneously arose through the comparison of effect sizes from very low quality previous systematic reviews of physical activity interventions for mental health. That's a lot. And there are many of us who deal with depression, anxiety in different states, from very mild to very severe. And exercise can be really positive. And there is good research that does show that exercise has a positive effect on mental health for numerous reasons. But one thing that's oftentimes missed in that, and that the media misses in that, it's not the scientists necessarily like misrepresenting the research. It's really easy to take interesting research, though, and turn it into something that it might not actually say. And so one of the things they brought up was that media claims often fail to mention that the evidence for exercise and depression lies mostly in mild to moderate cases. And so you have people who hear that exercise is going to help with their depression and they stop taking their medication, right? They go cold turkey on their medication or they stop seeing their therapist or whatever it is. And if they are not in that mild to moderate category and they have more severe depression, it can be cataclysmic. It can be really, really awful. And it can be very dangerous. And so just like trying to delve into that more. And I do think it's a really interesting brain exercise in why exercise is so important to all of us, but also like how it cannot be the end all be all to deal with other things that we have going on in life. And so I just wanted to express that here. And it's really cool to just to see a paper take this slant where it's like both scientific, but also trying to like better express how science should be utilized effectively and how the media needs to be really careful when they represent research incorrectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think trying to make it a like an all-encompassing claim is where they mainly go wrong, right? Because it's like telling someone that exercise is 1.5 times more effective. They're not telling them like how much exercise, what type of exercise, like what kind of exercise you were doing before you implemented this exercise regimen. And to me, I'm like, well, you're saying this now, and there's a lot of people who might exercise in a really negative way, right? Or might be in a state of like overexertion, LEA, where they're actually having worse mental health issues because of too much exercise. So it's like, yeah, I think these big claims that are so sexy can do some disservice to the community because it's like you're not really, I don't think the people who are putting these claims out there really understand the community and what harm this kind of claim can do.
Well, and exercise isn't this like bell curve, right? It's not like Moore's, or it's not this like perfect, like
Yeah.
it is kind of a bell curve, right? It's not this like perfect line in which like more exercise equals more better. And in
Right.
fact, more exercise at a certain point no
Too bad.
longer
It's
equals
very
better.
bad.
It's very bad. And we are in a
Yeah.
sport largely, right? We are ultra endurance athletes, where we do exercise a lot and it
Yeah,
can
past that
become
bell
something.
curve. Hmm.
Yeah, it can become something that's actually like really, really harmful to your health. So obviously, like we are a very special population that also needs to be researched in this realm, but you can see where it could lead someone maybe not to seek help who really would benefit from cognitive behavioral therapy or who would benefit from medication.
Hmm.
So
Or
I'm wondering
both.
where
Yeah.
your neuroscience brain goes on this.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we do see this specifically in ultra running. I mean, this isn't meant to sound negative, right? Of like replacing one addiction for another, right? And there's a lot of these very inspiring stories that like this is the healthier way to deal with either alcohol or drug addiction, right? But still in its, I mean, I've actually experienced this before too, because um, of like early on in my running career, having trouble taking a rest day and really having to examine that because it's something like almost like this obsession of like that I need. And I feel like a lot of us are very type A. I'll just like speak for myself. I mean, I definitely am. And so like realizing that, but the only way that I was actually able to realize that is because I have had actual talk therapy, talk to a psychologist, been highly involved in it with how you can actually um, change behavior and improve someone's health with getting through an addiction with actually talk therapy and doing it. There's a lot of research out there that shows the benefits of it. It's not an either or, it's a both and situation. So whether I mean I yeah, like I would I definitely think it's like both. I mean, sure, definitely like running, getting outside, like spending time in nature. It is like therapeutic. It is like this. There's a lot of, data out there that shows that it's like the mimics like the rapid eye movement in REM sleep. It's like meditative. You get this runner's high. There's a lot of positive things, and it can't replace actually talking about things and working through some of these issues.
Yeah, and they talk really highly of exercise in this study as well. They go on to say, does this mean exercise, medications, and therapy are all the same in the treatment of depression? The short answer is no. But beyond its antidepressant effects, exercise has numerous multi-system benefits, right? And that's why I think exercise can be a tool in the toolbox when dealing with depression, anxiety, etc. And they say, namely, exercise is known to improve weight, waist circumference, blood pressure, heart rate variability, among others, whereas antidepressants can have negative side effects oftentimes, weight gain, fatigue, sexual dysfunction, etc. So kind of trying to meet in the middle there as far as like positive and negative outcomes, recognizing that like moderate exercise, which is a lot less than what most of us do, just to like make that clear, like moderate exercise is generally
Like
30
five
to
hours a
40
week.
minutes of like, yeah, of like running or
Less
vigorous
than five
walking.
hours a week.
Yeah. So we way exceed that, but recognizing that like it can be a piece of the puzzle. And I just kind of liked how, again, I liked how the study was laid out, and I liked how um kind of in your face they were with it, because they were very flattering of exercise, and at the same time they're like, the media needs to do better in representing this. And it really jived with how my brain works.
Yeah. So I mean, this is reminding me too of this book that I read. Spark. It's written by, I need to actually look up the author. It's on the tip of my tongue, but he's an MD, and he writes about how like drugs, basically like pharmaceuticals, right? There's a lot of negative side effects that can happen with treating anxiety, depression, OCD, a lot of these different things. And one of the big things that doctors can aid in the treatment of such disorders is diet and exercise. So there is a piece to it, right? But it's like I said, it's more of like a both and. And I would actually encourage some of my students when I taught at Front Range Community High School to like we're not just going to focus on the pharmacology and all of that just in this neuroscience section, but also read something that like, if you're kind of interacting with your senses, there's like we're all, we have all these, your brain is a very complex thing, and like taking in all of these different this sensory information, and it's like knowing how to appropriately deal with that can help with treating all of these different disorders. But yeah, I'll get the author, but it's called Spark. And we can put it in the show notes.
Okay. Well, we're gonna move on towards our meaty, potatoy, tofu-y, eggy, beansy, whatever it is, interview today, and it's with the amazing Sarah Lesko. I'm biased. She's Seattle based, so she's just down the street from where I am, but she's super interesting. Tons of chapters here. So Sarah Lesko is a family doctor, and she's currently the executive director of the nonprofit Bras for Girls. She's the co-founder of the elite running club Little Wing Athletics. We actually interviewed Lauren Fleshman a while back after her book came out. She was the coach of Little Wing Athletics. Sarah Lesko is a coach and medical advisor at the pro level. She had a collegiate running career at Yale University, and then she became a family doctor practicing in community health center setting, then returned to get her master's in public health to be able to focus on community-based needs. She did amazing work in that area. In 2015, she took a hiatus from practicing medicine to work with Oiselle here in Seattle, the women's athletic clothing brand. And then in 2017, Sarah helped to start Bras for Girls program under Oiselle, and that has shepherded its growth and transitioned it outside of Oiselle to a big national nonprofit. We donated to them in 2023 at the end of the year. They provide tens of thousands of bras every year to girls all over the country. It's really, really cool. Some of the interesting stats from the work they do include that 46% of girls reported their breasts affected their sports and exercise participation. And then more than 50% of girls um, did not wear a sports bra when they exercised. And so this program is directly impacting keeping girls in sports. And we cannot wait to talk to Sarah Lesko a bit more about that work and so much more.
My name is Sarah Lesko, and I'm the executive director of Bras for Girls. We're a nonprofit based in Seattle, but operating all over the US and some internationally now as well. And we donate sports bras to girls in need, and we accompany that with breast development education. So they get that additional information that helps them have body confidence as their bodies are changing, because we all want to feel comfortable moving our bodies. And we've really been growing a ton. So since we spun off as our own nonprofit in 2021, we've basically been doubling every year. And in 2024, we distributed over 63,000 sports bras and booklets.
Wow. That's so cool. You were one of our charities that we donated to at the end of last year in
Yeah, thank you so
2023.
much.
It
Yeah,
was it was cool. It's a meaningful program. Hillary Keeley and I have all been greatly impacted by being able to stay in athletics from kiddos all the way to post-collegiate athletics now. So something that we're all very passionate about. And you're doing really amazing work there. We're going to talk a lot more about kind of the ins and outs of the organization in a little bit, but I want to rewind because not everyone that will be listening to this will be super familiar with who you are and your kind of the different hats and different chapters you've worn in and around running in the sport. And so
sure.
we generally rewind all the way back to just like understanding how running came into your life and what that
Hmm.
looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my parents were hippies. They divorced when I was young, and so we kind of had a very unconventional childhood. My sister and I bounced around a lot. Um, but I did track and cross country in junior high and in Enumclaw, and I wasn't a good athlete by any stretch of the imagination, but I enjoyed it and kind of got hooked on the team aspect, and then saw my sister having so much fun with the high school cross country team. So sometimes in junior high, if I had nothing to do after school and our season was really short, so it was over, I would just take the bus to the high school and then I would join her in her practices. And I didn't have I was just like in my regular shoes and like with my winter jacket and jeans, and I would run with the team, just tagging along with her, and I could keep up on their easy run. So I think that was the first sign that like, oh, maybe I can keep doing this in high school. And did cross country and track in high school as well. And then after my sister went to college, we moved to just my mom and I moved to Eugene, Oregon. And that totally changed my life. Just it was a different culture down there. Eugene was really the hub of running, of distance running in the US. And at that time, Steve McChesney was the high school coach at South Eugene High School. And it was phenomenal. I mean, from the second I showed up at school, they kind of just took me in. And I felt like I had a family down there. Actually, for the first 2 months that we moved down there, my mom hadn't moved yet. So I was living by myself, and she would just come down on the weekends and check in on me because her job hadn't transferred over with the Forest Service yet. So the team really kind of took me in, and they had morning practices also. So we would meet, we would, do lifting, and then have breakfast together. And it really just showed me how running can be your family. And that was the start of something different. I'd never thought about running in college, really had no clue of what I wanted to do. But it was so impactful for me to be welcomed onto this team of just really amazing, amazing people that we're still in touch today. In fact, we're going to hopefully be able to do a little reunion in Boston with Steve, where he's coaching now and thinking about retiring with our high school cross country team. And we won state my senior year. And, that still makes me feel happy inside when I think about it.
That's such a cool experience. I also can't imagine like being a high schooler, basically living on your own but also like immediately adopted by this, secondary family. Like that is, I mean, I hope that's what so many people can get out of the running community, but I know that those
Hmm.
experiences are incredibly unique. It sounds like you also had a unique experience running in college, like a very positive experience. Tell us a little bit about kind of that high school opportunity that I think ultimately set you up for this collegiate running opportunity at Yale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hadn't really thought about running in college. I knew, my sister had gone to college, and so I knew I wanted to go to college, but hadn't really thought about running in that way. But we had just kind of a network of connections. So the Yale coach at that time, Mark Young, was friends with Bob Seveny, who was coaching Joan Benoit, or had coached her back in the day. And Bob Seveny's daughter Trish went to South Eugene High School. So even though Bob lived on the East Coast, his kids lived with their mom in Eugene, and Trish was on my team. And so Bob came to a cross country meet and watched me running, and then told Mark to recruit me. So it was really just this random thing. And so I got flown out for a recruiting visit my senior year and absolutely loved it. It was one of those experiences. So I only applied to 4 schools. Um, they were Duke, U of O, Bowdoin, and Yale. I was like, okay. And I'd gone to Duke for a trip, and it just wasn't a good fit culturally for me. And then I went to Yale, and just once I got to campus, I just thought, oh, this is my home now. I loved everyone on the team. They were on the rise. They'd gotten seventh at NC2As the year before, so the year that I was being recruited, and just an amazing campus, and loved it. And so that also was just, we were so lucky, I think, looking back now, to see that what the culture was like, because it felt like women's sports were so important there, respected, valuable. And it was only the 7th year that they'd had a women's cross country team. So that's one of the things I've really come to see, is that when trailblazers forge a path, the people who come behind them have no idea, right? They just step in, and you see that in all of the changes that happen with Title IX, with, the soccer pay parity, all of that. Like, once that happens, then people are just like, oh, this is the new normal, and this is how it is. And that's very much how I felt. I was like, oh, I'm stepping into this big tradition. Literally, it was the 7th year that they'd had a team there, which is very funny. But yeah, so my freshman year, I got to campus, and same thing. The team had big goals. And the captain was very strict. Kelly Grodeke, she was amazing. In fact, her daughter, Nikki Van Ness, was a great runner at Columbia. Now I think she's doing a 5th year somewhere, but just amazing runner. And she really kept us reined in. She was like, you are not to go to parties. If I ever see you out, I will kick you off the team myself. We have big goals. And so I didn't go to any parties the first, 3 months I was in school. I just went to my science classes, and I went to practice, and we got third at NC2As, and I was the 5th runner. And I remember Mark telling me, like, just be the first 5th runner. And I was, and I beat U of O's 5th runner, which was like a big feather in my cap because I hadn't been recruited there. So it was one of those things like, oh, this is amazing. So that was a great start to college. And I think, college is tough, right? So then I really hit a slump. So my slump came later than a lot of people's, but for, really the next 3 years of college, I didn't improve my running. It was very frustrating for me. Just felt really stagnant, kept upping my training, trying to get faster, which, it doesn't work when you're in that time of life. So, it wasn't all amazing every year, but I think the overall feeling, and we were so close with the men's team, that it was just a wonderful time of life. And we still all stay close. I mean, I met my husband my freshman year, we started going out, and yeah, it was wonderful.
It's I was reflecting on this because I had a really great collegiate ski experience. But my experience was like even like inter cohort, inter time period, like not everyone's experiences can be uniform. Like I definitely had teammates who had a really hard time, who had a hard time with their
Mm-hmm.
coach, who did not have a positive
Mm-hmm.
experience. You've worn a lot of hats too, kind of interfacing with elites, middle school athletes, high school athletes, collegiate athletes, post collegiate athletes. Like your career has has kind of intersected all those individuals. I'm wondering, like, coming from this experience where like you had a really positive experience overwhelmingly. Like the team culture was
Hmm.
good. The coaching experience was good. How do you deal with that like cognitive dissonance on the other side of that too, as a person who does like know athletes, has seen programs who have not had that experience. So those things are happening like in tandem all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so nuanced, right? And everyone needs something different from their coach. So I think in a way, it's impossible to be, the best college coach for an entire team of people. I just don't know if there's any way to do that. And, there is clearly, there are wrong practices, there are abusive practices, so there are a bunch of things that are not nuanced, that are just not okay, especially around low energy availability management, you know, bullying, verbal abuse, all of those things. But even, take all of those away, then you just have a team environment. And for some people, that environment is not going to work for them, which, or they're going to have injury problems that make their collegiate experience be bad regardless. They're not going to feel, and we know for women, really the years from 18 to 22 are not ideal athletically, right? That is not the time that your body is responding to training the most. It's really one of the most frustrating times to be a high level athlete, is during that time when your body hormonally is not going to be responsive. So I think, that it can be very challenging for that reason. And I have mixed feelings about how the transfer portal has kind of affected collegiate sports. I think on one hand, it's great for athletes to have more opportunities to go to a program that might be a better fit for them for whatever reason. But it also, with people transferring around all the time, you don't get that team cohesion as much. And I think it's harder to build team culture when people are kind of coming in and out.
Yeah, before we like take a hard left swing towards medical school, I just want to like while we're talking about collegiate athletes and like that transfer portal and those kind of things, you talk about these recruiting trips and like having this kind of like right time, right place experience, getting this like opportunity to see Yale and ultimately go there. That's like changed a lot, I feel like, in a very rapid time period, even from like when I was in high school and people were like, announcing that they're going to X, Y, or Z school. I graduated high school in like before the real advent of social media. Um, we've seen that rapidly change. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering how you see, or
Mm-hmm.
like just like, kind of like outside eyes looking in here, but also being very in tune with the sport, how the transfer portal or like the NIL deals now that we're seeing, like even go beyond college, we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing high schoolers on NIL deals. There's no limit, it seems,
Mm-hmm.
to like how young a minor can be potentially for an NIL deal. I'm just like wondering before we take a swing back towards medical school and running, how you are like thinking about how that's impacting collegiate athletics right now and just like that running pipeline for women who again are not necessarily
Yeah.
in like the perfect spot for athletics in that 18 to 22-year-old time frame.
Totally. No, I mean, I'm kind of sad for the sport right now. I mean, I think a lot of people are worried about, how the NIL movement, and then how also just the rejiggering of all the conferences, and how, the sports that are bringing in revenues are now going to be getting a share. So revenue sharing amongst sports is going to go down. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty with what's going to happen to cross country and track and field in general, right now. But I think, with NILs, it's so tough because people are then being in a position of being professional in some respects, and they can't just develop on that natural timeline. So I think it does add this extra layer of pressure. And, what a high school and collegiate athlete doesn't need is pressure. So it does make me sad for the sport. I mean, I think there are so many programs that are still protecting the athletes and doing a great job. Sarah Hopkins at University of Minnesota, I think she's so good at nurture talent and letting people develop over the years. She still takes walk-ons, but now that you have roster limits, I don't know that that program will be able to do that. Again, it's all of these natural pathways for development are kind of being shut off. I wonder how, if Div 1 is so closely controlled, what is that going to do for Div 2 and Div 3? Maybe those programs now are going to be the better places to go if you're a developing athlete, if you don't want to rush anything, if you don't want to have that pressure. So I'm just kind of curious to how that all plays out.
Mhm.
Because obviously that's how that's how our higher level athletes develop, right? They develop in college. And if that opportunity is taken away, it is going to eventually decrease the pipeline. And our adult teams, our Team USA is not going to be as strong.
Mhm. Yeah, and I just think like it all came around a time where I feel like we were just making headway with getting rid of coaches and policies that like encourage really poor behavior by athletes. And now all of a sudden we're like adding this to the mix. You're like, wait, we weren't ready for this. This is we're not ready.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Keely, your gears are turning. Is there anything that you want to ask or add to this before we kind of talk about Sarah's next chapter?
No, that was my ad.
That was your ad. Yeah, I think we're all concerned. We have a lot of concern on this. Um, I want to talk a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You you mentioned that, running kind of was up and down through the rest of your college career. And then post collegiately
Mm-hmm.
you went to medical school. And I don't know if that's like if running takes a back seat because of this up and down relationship with running during the remainder of your collegiate time at Yale, or if it takes a back seat in part because being a medical student is a full-time job. And so I'm wondering how you navigated that big change and if that was a needed identity shift or like an identity shift that happened because you like were pursuing this next career step.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to stop running. I wanted to, try to do it at, it's like a semi-pro level back then. And I tried and I got injured. So it definitely wasn't something I wanted to do. So I had the first year out of college, my husband was training down with the Enclave with Frank Aguilano in Georgetown. And that group was incredible. I was just teaching high school up in Connecticut, but I was super jealous of him having that opportunity. And so the next year, I wanted to give it a try. So I moved down to DC and trained with that group. And I got really badly injured in December. And I couldn't fix my injury. And so I was like, screw it, I'm going to go to med school. So it wasn't something I wanted to do. And in fact, then I still planned to try to take a year out from 95 to 96 to try to qualify for the trials. So I still held on to my dream of getting healthy and being able to run. Um, but that didn't end up happening. But yeah, so it definitely wasn't a willing shift. And I think when I went to med school, I still had so much energy and ambition and really wanted to be running and um, felt like I was missing something in my life for sure.
Yeah, it's a hard time period because you are having such a big life shift with this like adoption of being a full-time student in a way that's very demanding and at the same time have the bandwidth to potentially do something that you find very fulfilling. And I have to imagine that that was a very frustrating time period. Despite like we know before we hit record, you said you were telling Keely, who's now a first year medical student at OHSU, that you loved medical school, that you loved residency. So something that you're also very passionate about. But I have to imagine
Mm-hmm.
that that identity shift probably took a number of years throughout that entire process.
Oh, I mean, I think I didn't really come to terms with everything that happened with running until like 5 years ago, just being perfectly honest. But like in the meantime, you live your life. And it's not that your life is not fulfilling and wonderful. It's just that there's this little piece that you haven't really figured out how to integrate it into who you are. Um, and I mean, I had so much energy to do something else, except, besides med school that I just couldn't get my injury healed. And so we decided to have kids. So I had two kids in med school and really I just like, I have so much energy. I have to do something else. So that was kind of where we poured it in.
Oh, that's so cool. That is definitely inspiration because I'm in my brain like thinking like, okay, how do I plan out this next 8 year track and have kids and all these things? One thing I've been grappling with lately, and I would love your opinion on this, but I think when you're really ambitious about something, it's really easy to tie some of your self-worth and your identity into something, as we were saying. How did you find, how were you able to separate like your identity from running from your identity as a med student? Like, for example, if I'm running and maybe my running training's not going super well, because right now I'm still trying to train competitively while in med school, but maybe I have an injury flare up, or for example, like you're not feeling as good on your run. how did you like separate that from translating into how you feel about yourself as like a med student? Because I find it's really hard to like pull them apart and be like, no, no, that doesn't mean I'm going to do poorly on this exam. It's just my running. But for you, it's like you didn't have that running thing. Did that permeate into like your confidence as a student or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone struggles with this who's, poured so much energy and time into being an athlete is when if you're not getting the feedback from it, or if you can't do it at all because you're hurt, it just really leaves this big gap in your self-esteem for sure. So, I think for me, I kind of poured that into, being as good of a medical student as I could be. And then, once we had kids, the nice thing about that is it took the focus away, right? So we were so busy and just putting all of our energy into school. And my husband was in business school, so it was just school, and kids. And that keeps that little voice inside you from piping up, right? Because I'm literally keeping someone alive right now. So that takes precedence. Not that having kids is a solution to all of our life's problems, but for me, it was good at tamping that voice down. I think for me, when that flared back up was, some of my friends were still running competitively. And then when I was done with med school and even in residency, I really wanted to get back to running. And my injury just still hadn't healed. So that was when I think I had the most frustration, is I realized that like, oh, actually my body now would be responding to training while I'm in that nice age of like 28 to 32, where you're able to peak athletically, and I still couldn't do it. So that made me, I definitely was really sad. But at that point I was already, getting out of residency, and it was, I had other things going on. But it's tough. I mean, you have to just be able to take positive feedback in other areas of your life. And I think that's a learned skill, right? So I think some people don't take positive feedback very well. They don't internalize it, or they don't accept that they're doing a good job if it's not in an athletic pursuit where it's just a number and you can say, oh yeah, I did well, like I PR'd. So it's learning how to recognize your own worth across all of the areas of your life.
I love that. And it's very, very needed, I think, for all of us that we can take and see that we're doing good work outside of the running numbers that make it so much easier to grapple with. Running
Mm-hmm.
has come back into your life. And conveniently, Oiselle seemed to come back and like come into your life rather maybe at the exact same time. And I'm wondering what that looked like. You finished residency, you were working in a community setting, with vulnerable populations as a provider. And then all of a sudden, like running's coming back into your life, and this really cool women's running apparel company also seems to come into your life at the same time. And I'm wondering how those two things intersected.
Yeah, it was really just happy circumstance. So, I finally, so my family, we all went down to Eugene for the Olympic trials in 2008. And we hadn't, like we'd intermittently gone to track meets and whatnot, but Bob and I were like, oh my gosh, this is our sport's so exciting. Like we have a little bit more breathing room. Our kids are older, they were in like junior high and elementary school. So we were like, okay, we can make this happen. So we went down in '08, watched the trials, and it was an incredible meet. I mean, it was the men's 800 where you had the blanket finish, right, with Andy Weeding and Nick Simmons and Christian Smith. Like that was crazy. And the sound levels were just it was insane. And then Amy Oder Bagley, who's a solo time qualifier on her own, basically a time trial, makes the Olympic standard. Like there were so many amazing races that after that, I was like, I have to figure out how to run again. Like I must figure this out. So I decreased my work schedule and just started literally like my halftime job was just seeing PT and all kinds of random practitioners. I mean, I did acupuncture, I did like healing, like non-traditional healing. I tried everything. I was like, I have to figure this out. And just over the course of 6 to 12 months, finally got back to being able to run for 10 minutes without having horrible abdominal pain. So it was just this, I just needed all this time to figure it out. And finally was able to run, then build it up, run 30 minutes in a row. And around that time, one of my friends who was the high school cross country coach on Mercer Island, which is where my kids went to school. And I'd been coaching in the middle school. So I knew her from transferring the kids up to her when they got to high school. She said, "Oh, you should meet, know this company, Oiselle, and Sally. She runs Masters Running. You should maybe meet up with her. I think you would like it." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not competitive yet. Like it's that thing of like, oh, I'm not good enough yet. Like I can't do Masters racing." But finally, we kind of, email back and forth a few times. And then I met up with them for a long run. They have a Sunday run group. And it was just so fun. So it was that spark of like, oh, this is the team again. This is, my group of people that we can commune with and be friends with. And it just kind of really took off from then. And that was in fall of 2010.
I love it. I'm just like picturing you and Sally being like set up on this like kind of blind date of like, I think you guys will like each other. Like, here you go.
Well, and
Try it
she
out.
gave me like all these running clothes. So I was still running in like my college, like some shitty Under Armour bra. I don't know if I'm supposed to swear. Anyway, there's like horrible things. I mean, they were so old, literally like 20 years old clothing that I was still running in because I hadn't really run. So and she gave me this little stack of really nice Oiselle clothes after our first long run. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Like, where am I? This is insane. So I guess like fast forward a little bit, like you've gone on this long run, you've like met this woman, she runs this cool company, they're Seattle based, like there's got to be a lot of energy there. You've like,
Hmm.
your schedule's gone down to part-time, medically, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, not like, why don't you not just like run with us? Like, why don't you like work with us? Like tell
Yeah,
like walk
I
us
just
through like
I
that
just
leap.
started doing some small projects. I mean, I think I was always interested in the elite side, and so I kind of drew her toward that part of it, just working with elite athletes. And then, she obviously was doing all this community work and then making these great clothes and everything. So I just started doing some small projects kind of on the side here and there. And then, and doing some masters cross country racing with the Oiselle Masters team, so just kind of little things. But then it was just so fun, right? There was a lot of energy to it. And then one of my kids got sick in 2015. I had to take some time off of work and I started just doing more and more stuff at the office and I thought I was taking a little sabbatical, but I ended up haven't gone back to practicing medicine since then. So.
That to me is kind of wild. We've talked actually a lot on the podcast about those like kind of career transitions. We've got listeners that the age range is really wide. And we had a conversation a couple podcasts back about just like how have we gotten to where we currently are, and we're like
Hmm.
still very much like flailing forward, like potentially indefinitely.
I think that's your whole life, right?
Yeah. But this idea of like having different chapters. So you go from
Right.
practicing medicine to like sort of honestly, this is like not the greatest analogy because you're not a frog being boiled, but it sounds like you were like kind of a frog in a pot of water with Oiselle, where
Hmm.
they were like, oh, she's doing a little bit of work. Oh, she's doing more work.
Hmm.
She's one of us now, type
Hmm.
of thing. Like you didn't even know that you were
Hmm.
necessarily like coming into the fold full time. Was there a moment where it was like where you had to make that leap, or you're like, or were you like cognitively were like, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah, I
not
mean,
going
I
back to
was a very
medicine.
willing participant. So yeah, I would say I wasn't the frog so much as I was I was leading the boiling as well. But yeah, I mean, I think at the time, I just realized when I'd taken a couple months away from practicing that I was not in a place emotionally where I could re-enter the same type of work that I was doing. I mean, for me, I think I kind of have evolved emotionally later than some people. So I started going to therapy in 2021 and kind of have realized that probably being, a primary care doctor was not the best match for me, just on an emotional level. It's very difficult for me to separate from my patients, just a lot of things that some people are able to maintain energy over a long period of time. And for me, the way that I practice medicine was much too intense to be able to maintain it. So I think I needed to somehow change anyway, but I loved working with really disadvantaged populations. So, I was going to have some problem trying to find the perfect way to practice for me. And I also, was privileged enough we didn't need me providing health insurance for our family at that time. We didn't need me bringing in a big income. So, I recognized that I had that flexibility to kind of try to figure out what I was doing. And our kids were getting older. They didn't want to spend as much time with me, so it was kind of this confluence of events. But yeah, I think it feels like it was less a conscious decision and more just I kind of was drawn to where the energy is coming from and, where I'm getting kind of the most life force and go with that. So kind of operating on more of a gut level, I think. But it's hard. Like Keely, you can imagine it leaving medicine. So you get on this train and it's like, okay, now you're taking the MCAT. Now you're going to med school. Now you're going to residency. And then you kind of get off the train, but you're still, you've done all of this stuff. So it's really madness to think about abandoning that financially and just even identity wise. So I've had to struggle with that a little bit, but in my work with Bras for Girls, I've really felt like I'm actually having more of a difference in people's lives than what me personally was able to do in the medical setting.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And I think too, like going from undergrad, only taking a little bit of time before going into medicine, it feels like it's your only identity and that you can't possibly turn away from it. But if you reflect on it, like you still got to practice for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but it is interesting. I totally get that. I have some friends who I think got on that train because they were just told they should be a doctor. And now they're kind of reevaluating like, oh, actually probably shouldn't have done this, but now I'll pick a specialty that's maybe the least like extroverted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, only recently have I started thinking like, oh, I could envision myself in a type of practice where I would be fulfilled and also be able to maintain that balance. I mean, I've been taking some courses from the Menopause Society, just going through their certification booklet. I think if I went back to practice, I'd probably be focused on perimenopausal, menopausal athletes. Like it would be a very niche practice, very small. But I think that could be fun. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go through all of that work to get my license reactivated. I might. I'm not sure. I'm still just kind of thinking about it.
That would be cool.
Yeah. It's hard to get off the train though. Like it's really hard to get off the moving train once you're on it. And I'm wondering, it seems like maybe it comes naturally to you, or the work that you've done over the last 4 years has kind of maybe helped to not null, but like just like change your thought process on it. But like switching roles and moving into different roles is really hard. And it feels like though over the course of your career that you've been able to develop an ability to kind of shift from one role to the next. And I'm wondering, was that a natural thing for you, or is this something that you've consciously had to work through over the course of these different kind of role pivots?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anyone, you have to practice at anything for a while before you're comfortable doing it. I mean, I think I've recognized that in the running setting, starting from high school when I moved to Eugene, I feel very natural in the running setting. So that's always been a place of comfort for me that I feel comfortable with the way I can move my body, that I feel athletic, that I feel, and so being injured, like that sucked, but I also still had that general knowledge of like, no, like I know how to do this, even if I can't do it right now. So that role I think has always been kind of natural, but then other roles, I mean, being a doctor is weird, right? All of a sudden you're in charge of someone else's health and body, and you have to feel confident doing that, even though you probably don't know that much yet. So yeah, that for sure is just a process of getting to feeling confident in what you're doing. And I think again in the Bras for Girls work, it's very because we're so service oriented, it just keeps you grounded, right? Like so I don't really have to be an identity when I go someplace. I want to facilitate girls and teachers, coaches feeling comfortable getting what they need to do exercise. So there's a little bit of role playing with that. And, we try when we're doing our presentations, we try to say the word breast a bazillion times, really make people feel comfortable with it. And girls, especially in middle school, they do not want to meet your eyes. They don't want to say the word breast. They don't want to talk about breast. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want any of the boys in the school to know that there's a Bras for Girls thing happening. It's very there's still a lot of anxiety and kind of they get really embarrassed around those conversations. And so we do some role playing with that. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but I think for me, I always try to lean into like the heart of what's happening and just connect on that level with whatever activity is going on. And then I don't have to worry so much about, what people think or, kind of the appearances as much.
I think it's super fascinating that it feels like to me anyway that you have ended up in a role that so strongly suits the things that you really are passionate about and that you enjoy. It ties into running, it ties into giving back to the communities and facilitating these communities. It comes back to, keeping kids in sports, keeping girls in sports, allowing them to continue on to run in high school, to run collegiately to continue to be active individuals. So I think it's really cool that like all this experience that you've had up into the place, even though medical school might not feel super
Mm-hmm.
related to that, in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of ways, the things that you were drawn to in medicine also are at play here.
Yep.
Um, Obviously, like this launched while you were at Oiselle, and I think it's interesting to think about like the catalyst for this a little bit. You were a middle school coach for a long time. You have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of personal experience, obviously, as a female athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about like the initial seed of getting this off the ground, like while it was like kind of a internal at Oiselle
Yeah,
entity.
totally. Yeah. So I gotten my MPH at UW in 2008. So I also did some health services research and kind of kept an eye on like public health researchy type thing. So in 2016, there was research coming out of the UK around the importance of sports bras for schoolgirls. So they surveyed, I think it was like 2,000 schoolgirls in the UK between the ages of 10 and 14, and really identified that lack of information about breasts, that lack of a sport bra, that concern about their changing body was one of the major reasons why girls turn away from sports and physical movement in those ages. So it makes sense for any of us who've gone through that body stage, but it was, as you know, it's like until you see something in a study, then you're like, oh, okay, now we can act on it. So it's just that first kind of large scale study around the importance of sports bras. And at that time, Wazel had some extra bra inventory left over from a prior season. So we just kind of put two and two together and thought, oh, this would be a fun little program. Let's put a page on our website and and see where it goes. And we kicked it off with a program at in Running for a Better Oakland, which is a community-based running program in Oakland, California. It was really great, just super positive. And then we had a really huge giveaway with Girls on the Run Puget Sound in May, which was, the conversations that we were having made it clear that this was a huge issue and that really nobody was talking about this anymore. And I think that was one of the surprising things is for me, I always think of progress as, you're marching forward, right? So, when I was coming through school, it was after Title IX and, we were given access to sports. I would think like, oh, okay, well, by this point, probably, why wouldn't everyone automatically get a sports bra? Why is this even an issue? But it really has felt like the pendulum has swung back the other way. And now there's less comfort in talking about female bodies. And, teachers and coaches are very worried about the sexual aspects of breasts. They are, girls are objectified, women are objectified. And so a lot of people just shy away from talking about breasts at all because they don't want to get in trouble or have this be, something that feels uncomfortable. And that was one of the things that we noticed in our first, in the Girls on the Run Puget Sound in May of 2015, or sorry, May of 2017, is that the conversations we were having, people were excited to be able to have words to talk about it, to look at a pamphlet and say like, oh, now I can have a conversation with my daughter. Thank you. Thank you. Dads, moms, anyone. And that first year, just with the website, just having one page up, we didn't do any outbound solicitation or anything, just kind of word of mouth. I got requests for 68,000 sports bras. And it really showed that, okay, this is a bigger, issue than one brand. This is not something that's just some little, niche need. So I think the seed was planted then that this would probably be it could be a larger thing if we let it. So it kind of took a while to percolate. And then, COVID, it was just one of those things that I was just kind of managing as part of what I was doing. But then starting in 2019, we all agreed that we should make the effort to turn it into its own nonprofit, independent 501(c)(3). So I started that process. And that was there are multiple reasons why to do that. One is to be able to interact with other nonprofits in a way where you could get grant money, and also it really shouldn't belong to one brand, right? This is a huge issue. And we want all brands, we want all athletic apparel brands to feel good about being able to interact with Bras for Girls. And so now we work with over 25 different brands that donate bra inventory and let us purchase at cost for other bras. And really, it's more of a, now we can just really lean into being brand agnostic and working with anyone who has an economic need for what we provide.
That's massive.
Yeah. Talk about a big first order of sports bras. When you're like out working with whether it's schools or teams or communities, why don't you walk us through just like some of the encounters you have with the young girls or their parents and like how they respond to receiving the bras and like what kind of things have you seen them do or say afterwards? I would just love to hear kind of like how those interactions go.
Yeah, it's amazing. And this is where I think we just did our 3-year plan, kind of our roadmap, and we really want to improve our storytelling because it's so hard to communicate. And I think the best way to tell is when you come to a Bras for Girls distribution event and you can experience it, because often at the beginning there will be this very awkward air, like the girls don't want to come. We get donations from brands. We try to get donations that will basically bribe the girls to interact with us. So Vita Coco has been great. Literally we'd be like, hey, do you want some coconut water, to have them come over so that we can then start talking about sports bras or socks or anything to just kind of get them over. And you just start saying, hey, do you have a sports bra? And for over a third of the girls who've received sports bras from us, it's their first ever sports bra. So
Wow.
we know that's set. And a lot of times they don't want to talk about it. So we just you have to kind of almost not force the conversation, but just force the topic and to say, hey, like, our breasts develop, and sometimes we do the events depending on the setting. Sometimes we'll just be in sports bras only, just to show like, hey, this is fine. You can be in a sports bra if it's outside at an athletic event. In schools, we don't do that. And so just kind of going through that conversation, there sometimes isn't a lot coming back from the girls, right? So that'll be the first interaction. You're like, wow, I really had to provide all of the energy for that interaction. And so you feel like you don't know if it was impactful or not. But then what comes back later is this incredible story and now we've been doing this long enough that we can see year over year the changes. So the first thing that happens is that a parent will email in and, just from the booklet, go to our info and just say, oh my gosh, I had this amazing interaction with my daughter. She's never felt comfortable doing sports. This bra is amazing. It's high quality. And she had fun at her practice for the first time ever. So that'll be a story that we get. Or especially for girls, and we know that for girls who develop larger size breasts, it's harder for them, right? Because they're more likely to not even be in the right size sports bra. So we do bra fitting when we're at in-person events. We'll fit bras. We have all band and cup sizes. So for someone who's never been able to find the right bra size, it's very impactful as well. And so we've had coaches say, hey, the performance of this athlete went from literally they were barely participating in practice to now, they're scoring at all of their meets because they feel comfortable doing the motion of throwing or jumping and not feeling like they're exposing their body in a way that they don't feel comfortable with, which is really great. Some of the schools, especially in high school, when we've come back year over year, so we've worked with Rainier Beach High School in Seattle, and the first year, and they have a large East African immigrant population. So girls who are in more modest dress may have head coverings. Culturally, their families are not going to want brightly colored bras. So we make sure to bring, black bras, or just ones that are very, they're not flashy, help measure them. And the change year over year in those classrooms is incredible. We'll come back and all of a sudden the girls who would barely look at us in the face the year before are coming up and saying, hey, I remember you. I need a new sports bra. I think my breast size changed. just the way they're talking about their bodies is so different. And that's been so cool. And it's happened really quickly. It's only been, maybe this will be the third year that we're going to this same health fair at a high school. And just to see the culture change that is possible with it has been remarkable. So I think that's the part where we're leaning in more around this. Hey, we need to get this education and culture change piece, really push that, because that's a way to help spread, this education beyond what we can do. We've also worked with Beat the Streets, which is a wrestling program, which is great. And it offers access to sports for girls who really haven't had a lot of, basically, they don't have anything offered to them. So it's in a lot of cities, East Coast cities, and wrestling, sports bra is required equipment, and it also can't have any clasps or metal on it, and it has to be higher chest coverage. And so we have to meet their specific sports bra needs. And we've been able to do that. And we were able to attend a Beat the Streets wrestling practice in New York City when we were there for the New York Marathon. And it was one of the cooler practices I've ever been to for any sport, hands down. These girls were absolutely fierce. They were amazing athletes. And it was just knowing that we were helping support them on the mat was really cool.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, wrestling is like one of the fastest growing sports options for like middle school and high school girls.
It is. I think wrestling and flag football are the two fastest growing sports right now.
That's so cool. Like what a sweet opportunity to be able to work with those programs to continue the literal growth. And it's cool too that it's not just getting the sports bras to the girls that seems to be so impactful, but also those educational pieces, those moments where they can now have a conversation with their friend, with their coach, with their parents, and
Yep.
vice versa. Like that conversation can now go both ways because they have the terms and the info,
Yep.
like that wall has been broken down. Like that is
Exactly.
wonderful.
Exactly. It breaks that culture of silence. I mean, what we know about girls, especially, is that, there's so many external influences on them that if something is not talked about, they will often internalize and think something's wrong with them. Right. So it's that whole body confidence piece. And, body confidence has been directly linked to reasons that girls stop sports. So, what we do, it's not rocket science. It's also a small intervention. So I always want to keep our work in the ecosystem of what everyone's doing. Like, we're not providing sporting opportunities for girls, so our role is really, I see it, we're like a middle person, and we're also there to support the great work of other people. So a sports bra is necessary, but not sufficient. So that's one of the things that we've really worked hard on, is understanding that we need to be elevating the work of all of the community organizations that we work with. So we're very intentional about that.
Yeah, you're not superseding any other organization's work, but you are additive in a way that can support the work they're already doing, which I think is
Exactly.
an
Yeah.
important piece of the puzzle. I guess we got two questions, I think, as we wind down here. And the kind of the second to last one would be kind of just like the future goals for you all with Bras for Girls, as far as like you've had year over year growth, being able to kind of impact, twice as many
Hmm.
individuals year over year. What are the goals for 2025 for Bras for Girls and beyond?
Yeah. So we're trying to figure out how many, what is our growth plan in terms of, we keep having all these requests come in. So, we'll get a request from a school district for 16,000 bras. So that's the type of request that comes in now. It's these massive requests. And what we want to make sure is that we're able to provide that educational piece and help with that culture change piece. So I think that's what we're really leaning in. So we're developing a curriculum that any middle school or high school teacher could use, like a 15-minute bra fit curriculum. We're also starting to do outreach to Title I middle schools. We reach out to all Title I middle schools in Washington State, and we're working with about half of them now. And that's a very high need population. It's kind of a great target zone for us, because they're all, economic need, like that's already met because they're a Title I school. And PE classes in most states are still mandatory, at least for part of them. You can only waive out for half of the year or something. So it's a way to kind of meet every girl. And the girls who are already in sports, if their coach is requesting abroad, they're already well ahead of a girl who's just doing PE and doesn't want to do sports and a sports bra may be a piece of that. So that's been exciting. We started expanding that to areas of California. And our goal is really, we would love for every Title I school in the US to know about bras for girls and be able to have access to our education curriculum and bra fit education. And then the next piece for us is really, okay, well, we can't provide, I mean, maybe in some dream world, but I can't logistically imagine that we can provide this bra to every girl in us who needs one. But we can help create a toolkit for how to get those local resources. There's no reason that a town, say, Bend, Oregon, that some sporting goods store or REI or someone would say like, hey, I want to, for girls who are in economic need in this town, we want to support them. So I think there are local solutions to this problem in terms of the inventory, if we can just have the culture change and education piece happening. So those are things we think about.
I love that. Okay, I lied. Two questions. One more, and then our final question. This is setting it up though. For people who are listening, who've never heard about for girls, or are now very excited about bras for girls, what can they do locally? Can they reach out to you all to help work with their school district to establish that education piece? Like, what's kind of the next step for someone who's inspired by what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. So our website, which is just bras for girls written out, .org, has all the information of like how we operate, how to request sports bras, and then we have a whole page for volunteers. So if you sign up on the volunteer page, if you're local to Seattle, we'll loop you in events here. If you're in other cities, we'll start a conversation around how to host events in your area. And a lot of it is just, first of all, finding out what is the need in your area. So we recommend starting with like boys and girls clubs at schools, just finding out where, and then you can coordinate with those adults who are in charge of those programs of how to request bras and how to make that happen. But we absolutely would love to work with anyone. There's so much need everywhere. So we want to pull in whoever's excited about it.
I love it. We'll link all that in our show notes as well so that people can continue to find you all. And then our last question, which is what we ask everyone, is just, you've had a lot of different chapters, a lot of different hats. And so in reflection of all that, is there something that you would tell your younger self, be your high school self, your collegiate self, your in the midst of med school self, something that you know now that you wish you knew then?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because every pathway is taking you to where you are right now. So wouldn't want to go back and necessarily change anything. And I think, a lot of my struggle when I was younger kind of brought me to this place. So I think just really appreciating the struggles and having the confidence that you're going to get to where you want to be. I think young people are wiser these days. I mean, my oldest son, who's a mental health therapist, and he's only 29, but he called me up and he was like, Mom, I'm just so thankful for all of these things I had to go through because I wouldn't be able to do the work I'm doing now without that. And for it to have that wisdom at that young of an age, I think I'm just getting to that place now. So I think, yeah, maybe just reassuring younger me that it's okay, you're going to end up where you want to be.
I love that incredibly message. And I think that's one that resonates with many of us. It's like, listen to your gut. You're doing it. It's not always going to be easy, but you're going to be where you need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Sarah, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. Awesome.
Oh yeah, thanks so much. And Keely, good luck. Feel free to reach out if you ever have any med school questions or just want words of encouragement.
The medical school support system. I love it.
Thank you. Yes, totally. I totally will.
So I love this theme that we've had kind of at the end of 2024 and now into 2025 of having so many different chapters of life and experiences. And I think that Sarah Lesko just really, I don't know, brings that story home even like more concisely with her journey to where she's currently at. So really want to just give Sarah Lesko a big thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, it was a really great conversation.
So before we let you go, you've been here for a while, so eat a snack. But before we let you go, we have to do a little society slamming before we send you out the door. I will start. I know Keely's got, I think, a personal DM that came in as well. But the first one goes, going back through old episodes because I'm a late listener, and the one with Adam Mary is really great. It mirrors a lot of my experiences navigating between representation and tokenism. So again, if you have not listened to that episode with Adam Mary, it's wonderful. He's been on a little bit of a running hiatus recently. He became a dad, but I did hear that he might be running the 50K at Black Canyon this February. So we've got a lot of things to cheer for. So it's a great listener recommendation, though, to go back and check
Yeah.
out some of those episodes.
Episode 34.
Awesome. Love it. Hillary, why don't you take this next one and then Keely can bring up one from her DMs.
Oh, I just get the positive one. They say, absolutely love Trail Society and the coaching gems and nerdy stuff you girls deliver. Thanks, we do too. Thank you, thank you, team, for supporting the women in the running community with great content.
Love it.
You're welcome. We're gonna keep on trying to do it this year.
Yeah, all of ours are just pretty positive ones this week. There's not a ton of questions, which is fun. But I'll leave us with a potential experiment that we have had a request from a listener on.
Okay.
Next one is, hi, thanks for the podcast. I really enjoy the mix of content. I especially liked the discussion about non-traditional paths recently, and the parody episode was super interesting. Happy New Year and good luck with the rest of the semesters in school. So this one was to me, but he sent it to the rest of you as well. So thank you for that lovely chat. And the parody one, yes, you guys need to check that out. If you missed it, get on that.
Yeah, it was a super fun way to close out the year. Kind of like hit you guys with a banger on New Year's Eve. But we had a great time recording that interview. So we hope that you guys enjoy it.
And then the last one is, please find me the best fuel for studying that is different from running. You must conduct the science and report back. Clearly a snack spree is needed. So, all right, we'll work on it. It'll be an N of 1, but we will start compiling some data. Maybe it'll be N of 3. We'll share that out.
Yeah, maybe next time we record all together, we'll give a snack synopsis.
Yeah, snacks good for brain health or brain function, and snacks good for metabolism during running.
I dig it. You're right. I normally don't take gels when I'm in the midst of my work day, but
I go crazy.
Yeah, Steven does that though. Steven will take gels at the hospital, which is just desperation.
Sugar to the dome.
Yeah, not for me. Okay, we digress. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of this week's episode. We love recording these things for you guys. Leave us 5 stars or 6 or however many you're allowed to leave these days. Write us a pleasant review and share it with all of your friends. Until next time, we'll see you out on the trails.